Hi, everyone. I'm Priscilla Steffen here with the Soul Fluent Leadership unofficial podcast audio series here with Catherine Rogers, founder of Meyer Moon Company. And this is episode 3 in the Expand Your Freedom Healer series, where I'm talking to my healers and people who are really imparting wisdom, insight, and inspiring stories, personal stories that will help us expand our freedom, heal more deeply, and step into greater wholeness as we navigate the leadership and business edges that are upon us. So I want to dive right in today because Catherine and Rogers and I have known each other now, I think, for maybe 6 years, right, Catherine?
I think
We
so, yeah.
met at a mutual friend's photography event that she was at the time catering, and it doesn't happen often, but I met you and I was like, there's something special about this girl, and I just approached her and offered to have her go through a process with me in the records, and it's been really fascinating to watch Catherine's really trajectory from shifting from a full-time then part-time position in what do you call it, strategic marketing, right? I guess. Also, she had a farm to table, I'm going to call it catering, chefing company as well. And then seeing her transition and found the Maya Moon Company, which makes delicious chocolate truffles, and is so much more now. And to see it thrive, and now we have the San Diego Cacao Cafe, the first of its kind in San Diego. So she is a chocolatier, a medicine woman, an entrepreneur, a lover of the land, of the earth, and is really someone that is a gem to know, because you truly embed your values in how you operate and how you live. You truly walk your talk, and you also make it so that your business and your leadership are a reflection as best as you can in your humanness of the values that you hold so dear. So welcome here, Catherine, and thank you for making the time to have a honest, deep, rich conversation with us today.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And I have a cat with me too, so if you see her little tail pop up, you'll know why.
Yeah, hi Marigold. I know Marigold. So today we're going to talk about all things entrepreneurship, evolving ourselves as so we can evolve our business. Catherine is also a Theta Healing practitioner. I would love to see a little bit of what Theta Healing is, because I have been a patient of Catherine's over the last maybe a couple of years now, year and a half, 2 years of steady, consistent Theta Healing that has been really supportive of my nervous system as I really shift and excavate through everything: money, health, relationships, business edges, leadership edges, shadow stuff. She just really holds the space so that I can kind of gently but potently move through. And we're also going to talk about the power of community. Um, I'm going to do a spoiler alert. Catherine's Soul Fluent Leadership archetype is the divine feminine for the most part, although she's also very much a mystic. And so her business, certainly in my mind, is a divine feminine business, which is about being for, with, and by community. So we're going to talk about what does it mean to build a very community-driven business, and truly a conscious business that creates a win-win-win for the planet, for the company, the customers, and the world. So there's a lot for us to get into here. Is there a place that you intuitively want to start, Catherine? Do you want to start with the aha? Do you want to start with your evolution? Where would you like to go?
I think it's relevant to talk a little bit about our early work together and that aha moment, Priscilla, because that kind of segues into even some of the healing work with the theta piece and how they kind of flow together with the energetic pieces that also inform business.
Let's do it. Because I was surprised when I saw your form. I'm like, really? Did I do anything? Did I have a role to play there?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. So, as you mentioned, yeah, we met at a time in my life where I was still very much deep in work, kind of along a specified career path. I went to grad school for health marketing and worked in the public health sector for almost a decade, which is amazing thinking back on that now. But at that point in time, when you and I started connecting and doing work in the Akashic Records and doing some really amazing, what I would consider coaching and mentorship around business. I remember it so clearly. There was a day, so at that point, I was doing my marketing work during the day. I was also on the board of a local nonprofit here in San Diego called Slow Food, which was all about good, clean, and fair food for the community, and feeling a lot of connection and passion around the ethos there with sustainable sourcing and connecting people more deeply to the land through the local food system. And then I also was on a personal path of spiritual development and really wanting to tune into my own higher knowing and how that informed my way of movement through the world. So, in many ways, at that point, and then I had my catering company doing these events. So, I felt very fragmented at that point. It was like in each category of my life, certain pieces of my core essence or natural aptitudes were being expressed. And I was also in very different places throughout the day and feeling stretched pretty thin as a result of that. So I remember that aha moment. I was actually sitting in the hallway outside of my very corporate office at the county building, like on a lunch break or something of that nature, and feeling kind of that pressure and strain of like, I want to live a more integrated life. I want to live a more holistic life in my work and in my business. And I remember it was a follow-up call to the initial Akashic Record download that you and I, or that you had shared with me. And the message that came through was essentially like, what if it was possible to have your work plug into those core values of holistic health, sustainability, and spirituality? And until that conversation, I had never really thought or believed that that could really be possible. And I felt like that insight created an energetic shift that opened up the path to building the business that is now Maya Moon with those core ethos and values in mind, and really understanding that even the seed of insight made a new belief possible within me, like, oh, wow, maybe I could do that. And what would that look like? And what would that feel like? And that really sparked uh, a new trajectory in many ways. So it was a powerful moment for me, for sure.
Yes, and what I kind of the work that we did in essence, I don't know if it was maybe a couple months, that wasn't too long, right? But the invitation that I made was to, since you were at the time, even thinking, you weren't even thinking chocolate yet, you were thinking about a line of nourishing, healthy desserts, right?
Mhm.
And it was like, well, let's go into the records and let's kind of create, channel out a marketing plan for what's to come, in all areas of business. And a lot of it was mindset. Chocolate didn't come up at the time. It was just like, these are some things for you to consider even before you step into this. And then, you know, and then it all kind of flowed from there, in your own path. And it's been such a beautiful journey to watch. But thank you, because sometimes we forget what's possible, right? We can have a landscape, an ecosystem from which we're operating, and we can forget that there's more outside of what we know is comfortable and familiar. And you have stretched in so many beautiful ways. You're one of the most aligned people I know in terms of how you live, how you operate in your business. And you're one of the few people that I know that truly, to the best of your ability, lives and loves her life, enjoys her life. And we're going to talk about that balance between work and play. Um, and I was like, wow, she keeps doing it. You prioritize it, time with family, you travel, you go and you surf, or you go off into nature and you camp. And it's like, wow, you run a really big business now, in my view, and with multiple parts, and you make it happen. So it's fascinating for us to dig into that. I want you just to share, because I think I read when you did your Kickstarter campaign or somewhere, where you said that the idea for Maya Moon came in it was in a meditation. So share with us kind of what Maya Moon is, how you got to create it, and how did that all unfold? The evolution from a seed, from an idea of what's possible, to creating something that is now a thriving chocolate truffle company, which that really doesn't begin to describe what Maya Moon is, a cacao cafe, and so much more.
Thank you. Yeah, so that spark really did set up a new path, and it was also a time in my life of deep spiritual exploration. I was spending a lot of time outside work. Largely in part because I was trying to figure out like how to take the things that I was good at and apply them to something that I was really uplifted and inspired by and felt like was making a really positive impact. That was a big point of that inquiry because at that point I would go to work most days and feel like I had done something, but not fully aligned and not fully in that kind of grounded, centered, like I really am giving life my all. I'm really being able to use the things in a way that I felt was meaningful. And so I was deep in self-inquiry, and I think that that was a big part of that. And yeah, to your point. So at that point, I had my catering company. I was and continue to be, but I was really passionate at the time of around creating nourishing desserts that tasted really good. So kind of backstory, throughout my 20s, I had a pretty serious autoimmune condition where I was having chronic inflammation and low energy and just really not feeling great in my body. So at that point, went on a pretty deep dive into functional nutrition and really starting to unpack and unpeel what was possible when really working with food for deep nourishment, deep healing. And a big part of that for me was remembering actually, which originally I had learned when I was a teenager, that I have an allergy to processed sugar. And every time I ate processed sugar, I was having pretty severe inflammation responses that were almost debilitating in many ways. Never to the point of dysfunction, but very internally uncomfortable and just not feeling good a lot of the time. And so I remembered that. And that's kind of what sparked the healthy desserts line that was a big part of my catering company. And so as I got more into that world and started to feel into, would it be possible to scale that business and to make that into something more than these weekend events, which were lovely, but also not so foundationally sound from the time energy investment, right? It's like you can only do so much work when your direct energy is the only potential output for profit, right? That was a point of contemplation at that point. So I started to think about scalability, and I was making a lot of desserts using natural sweeteners and a lot of nut-based products because they were kind of more in the paleo realm. So a lot of grain-free stuff that was, free of refined sugars, etc. And at that time, interestingly, it was also when almond milk was kind of hitting its massive growth trajectory. And because a lot of my products used almonds, there was a real challenge in sourcing truly sustainable, truly water wise almond products. And they were, if you could find them, they were expensive. And so it just was out of alignment. Really, it was like, okay, I want to create this product that can be scaled, but I don't want to create a product whose foundation is faulty as it relates to sustainability. And around that same time, had sat for the first time in a cacao ceremony at a festival up in Northern California, and it was beautiful. It was these men from Argentina that came and they served the cacao in a really like beautiful drink, and it had music, and it was a very connective and activating experience, and that sparked something in me. I was like, wow, like this is such a beautiful way to enjoy a food or beverage product that was really connective, that was really heart opening. It was more than just consuming something that moved it into this transformational experience. And as someone that had personally, I've always loved food, I've always loved nature. So it really just sparked something in me. I'm like, this is so cool. And that's what started this exploration and inquiry around cacao and the frequency of cacao. And in truth, that initial journey for me with cacao was just a personal practice. I started sitting with it in my own meditation, just out of place of curiosity, because I liked the way it felt in my body. And that turned into a daily ritual that lasted for 5 years, where I was connecting deeply with that plant spirit every day. And over time, that's what then sparked this fascination with the world of craft chocolate and the really interesting potential in that arena around truly sustainable, truly thoughtful, integrative sourcing that was helping the communities that we were getting beans from, as well as really getting to experience this powerful, potent superfood that is cacao. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is really the answer to so many of those questions around health and well-being, sustainability, and then the community connection piece, both locally and globally. So that was how that journey began. And absolutely, to your point, it has been divinely guided in so many ways. The first product that I launched for Maya Moon was our chakra chocolate truffles, which was a really fun and playful expression of the cacao. And as you mentioned, the actual idea for that came twofold. It actually came first through a collaboration, which this kind of speaks to the divine feminine aspect. There's a local yoga teacher here in San Diego who's lovely. Her name's Elka, and she is this beautiful ball of light and energy and offers these yoga plus dance experiences that are all very sensory activating. And she had reached out to me when I still had my catering company, and she was like, I want to do something with like yoga and chocolate, or yoga and treats. And so we were like, and she was doing this event called Chakra Vinyasa. So it was all about the different energy portals and chakras paired with like yoga movement, which is very much part of a lot of the yoga practice, is looking at the chakras and how those different energy centers express themselves. But she's like, but I want it to be like tasty. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we should do a chakra chocolate experience. So we'll have chocolate with different flavors, and then we can play with that, etc. So that was the first kind of like divine intervention, was this one-off event with her. And then from there, that got curated to grow into an actual experience that I took to Burning Man, where we did an hour and a half long guided meditation moving through each of the 7 energy centers with chocolates and all these different herbs and fruits and spices that were attuned for each of those energy centers and very specifically structured for them. And so that's where it started. And that concept then went through a bunch of R&D after those 2 experiences to really refine and perfect the recipe. And in 2019, I launched a Kickstarter at the beginning of the year to fund the packaging and the first release of that product through e-commerce and shipping nationwide. So yeah, that was the spark. And it was through meditation with cacao also, where I got the name for Maya Moon, which was such a beautiful experience in and of itself. And so there is a very mystical aspect to what Maya Moon has become in regards to these kind of intuitive or soul fluent, let's call them that, downloads that I've received over time from, this higher awareness, or this kind of guiding energy that have informed the journey. And more those, especially now, I mean, oh my goodness, running a business, especially that's scaling at the rate that Maya Moon is intense, and it is challenging me on so many levels. And I absolutely consider it the most challenging and growth supporting spiritual path that I've been on, more than anything else, right? Meditation, shamanic journey work, even theta healing aside, like this is where the real work happens, right? It's in the taking insight from spirit and materializing that into something, and then having, the ripple effect that happens in response to that. It's profound. But it's funny too, because if you had asked me, even from that point of the aha moment of merging health, sustainability, and community connection into something tangible, if you had asked me if I would be leading cacao ceremonies and serving cacao and having this whole line of chocolate products at that point, that wasn't in my field. But it is amazing to look back and see where the journey has led.
It really is a web of the best of you and all the many representations. When I saw, and now you're going to be leading in Ecuador an immersive cacao retreat in April. And when they did the description of you, medicine woman, shamanic healer, entrepreneur, chocolatier, I was like, yes. And that's so many aspects of you in one, that you live and breathe concurrently, cohesively. It's really beautiful to see. So let's talk about doing business in, for, and with community, with collaboration. What has that been like? What are some of the insights it has? I know that you said to me recently in one of our quick conversations, you're like, Priscilla, I have to keep giving up my version of what I think, because there's more that's coming up, and collaboration, and letting go, and working with the vision and with community. So share more about what that's been like for you.
I mean, from a big picture perspective, it's awesome, right? There's so much joy in the ability to create something of meaning that both touches into a global web of connectivity, because this is one of the things that I love so much about the industry of chocolate and cacao is that it's global by nature. We can't grow cacao except for in Hawaii here in the United States. So it creates this beautiful web of even just through the supply chain of network, and that's become this really beautiful cornerstone. And like you mentioned, with these immersive tours and really getting to weave these values and the history and even the magic and mystery that is chocolate, and this, everyone's kind of where we all have our stories. It's this beautiful mystical food, and it has all these potent health benefits and magical energetic powers, right? There's so much happening there. So to get to plug into the web from a community perspective on that level is awesome. And then more in the day-to-day function here in San Diego, where the business is headquartered, the creation of the Cacao Cafe, that is Maya Moon Collective, was such a huge piece of really bringing those ethos of community connection to the forefront. And it has been amazing and also challenging at times because of that aspect of kind of like getting out of the way of the business and still understanding that it is my job as the founder and CEO to lead and to steer the ship. And as we're interplaying with community, there's so many different viewpoints and perspectives and wants and needs. And so the balance of wanting to be responsive to that and really show up for community while simultaneously growing the business is an interesting challenge. Even this morning, I had a customer issue that I was working through, and I was thinking about like how much time was spent just in resolving this one issue, when zooming out into the broader field of what the business is and where my time and energy wants to be prioritized. It's like, wow, it's fascinating to be responsive and so connected in community. And even for myself personally, that was a huge shift because when the company launched in 2019, it was e-commerce. So most of my work at that time, kind of steering the ship, was more around operations and a lot of behind the scenes work, marketing, distribution, product development, these sorts of things. So there was a bit more of a buffer between myself and the direct community connections. It was still very relationship based, especially with building the relationship with the cacao farms that we source from, and of course being in service to our customers. But there was still a little bit of separation. And when I opened the cafe in 2021, so almost 2 years ago now, it pretty much what felt like overnight, I went from running a business that was largely behind the scenes to being 100% in the community every time I'm out in the world. And interestingly, the reason that I opened the cafe was in part because of COVID and all the shutdowns that had happened. The our drinking chocolate line, so we have our chocolate truffles and then drinking cacao blends, which are these beautiful, nourishing hot beverages that are rich and creamy and have different herbs in them, and they're all cacao based and they're lovely. The reason that the idea for the cafe came was because during COVID, I started meeting up with friends out in community. So we were outside, so we were able to distance, appropriately for what was happening at the time. But we were meeting on beaches and in parks and pairing this beautiful cacao with yoga or sound or meditation. And the community just came out. It just grew so rapidly and naturally because we were all really needing that. And for me, just getting to see the value of gathering with intention with this beautiful sacred drink, and really honoring that and honoring ourselves and being with the land and being with each other and really tuning in. There was a beautiful shift that was starting to happen in those realms. And it became clear pretty quickly that having a space to do that more regularly and consistently was really important. And so that's why I chose to open the cafe. And as I mentioned, yeah, pretty much overnight, I went from obviously being out in these kind of circles and hosting these events, but it was still very like time and place specific. It was like, okay, I'm going to go do this thing, and then I'm going to go back and keep moving the business forward. Whereas now, a year and a half or almost 2 years since the cafe opened, every time I'm out in the community here in San Diego, I'm being approached by someone, or someone's asking about curating an event, or oh my gosh, I love your cafe. Can you tell me the story about it? It's a this constant dance of being present and connected to the community, which is so beautiful. And it's been challenging. I am naturally an introvert, and I really value, and even from a human design perspective, I'm a manifester. So there's a lot of want for spaciousness in my life and space to kind of just not disconnect, but just like go within and sit with myself and have quiet, peaceful moments. And it's been a big stretch to be in and among the community, which is incredible and has been, a huge ingredient in Maya Moon's success, I believe. And it's really been an interesting journey for myself personally to navigate that and to find a sense of balance. Especially in a way, I mean, I created all of it, but I still feel like I was thrown into it. I like didn't realize like, oh my God, overnight I went from like behind the scenes just doing my work to full on in the community. And that's been an interesting shift to move through.
Indeed. And it's definitely a dance, it sounds like. And from the divine feminine, so fluent leadership archetype, there's so much about it's so much about being in community, and also about a rich depth of self-care and personal nourishment to feed, the best of your leadership moving, as you're out into the world, whether it be out in the community or out, behind the scenes or creating products or what have you. Because it's a key component. It just, I mean, we all need it, and it's particularly critical for the divine feminine archetype in this way. It's how she oozes and kind of dances in the frequency of pleasure and introspection, to be in a space to really operate at her best, because otherwise she gets cranky, difficult, and impatient, right? It can be not so fun. Let's talk about balancing work and play. I often wonder, how have you navigated what's your schedule like? What do you do? Like, how do you manage your time? How do you create these buffers? I mean, I text you because I feel like, we're connected. But I also am very like mindful of like, oh my God, what is she doing now? Like, is she behind the kitchen? Is she doing operations? Is she doing like, a plan for her next big expansion? Is she about to like plan her trip to Ecuador? Is she planning a trip? I always wonder like, what the hell is Catherine doing? Because you always sound grounded. And sometimes you mention in passing, oh, there was a bit of an upset, or then I was like, and then you just make it still sound like so calm. I'm like, how do you do that? Because the Brazilian in me is like, oh my God.
Well, there are definitely hair on fire moments for me too. So no matter whatever the transmission is, there's definite those moments, and for certainly, my most intimate relatings, even like my cats get the whole spectrum. And I will say that I think a lot of that comes, and this kind of loops back even with the theta healing work that I have cultivated over the last 15 years of deep spiritual practice. And I also I think about this too. Like I grew up as an athlete and in the mountains. So there was this kind of like natural way of moving energy through my body that I still feel like I'm able to access most of the time. So there are absolutely moments where I am stretched beyond my capacity and feel that kind of rise up of overwhelm or even anger or frustration or fear, whatever those things might be. And letting that energy move through is absolutely a key part, I think, for me, and I think many of us, our ability to come back into center and balance. And I feel that there's been this constant work to continue to being stretched, but those are where the growth edges happen, and even recently, the last year has been it's been very interesting because from an outsider's view on the business, I think most people would see that we are growing rapidly, which is true. And as we grow, the financial pressures are growing along with us. So there have been many moments over the last year for me personally, as the leader of this entity in many ways, really having to dig deep to continue to be in a space of faith and belief in the bigger picture of the vision and what is being created. and simultaneously finding the tangible resources to continue to move that forward. So it's been a big push, realistically. And I realized recently even that in the last few months, I was like, man, like I feel like in many times it's just a process of going through the motions. And what I come back to for myself is that the potential impact and this vision that I feel so honored to get to be the leader of, it is so much bigger than me. And because of that, that's actually a big part of what keeps me motivated. If I were just doing this for myself to make a splash or to challenge myself or to, have some personal financial gain, at least for me, in my truth, there's just no way that I would keep doing it. I would very happily have just thrown in the towel and been like, cool, that was a fun experiment. Moving on, let me try something else. And then when I think about, this, what really compels me forward, this opportunity to bring people to a space of heart opening connection, and that every time someone drops into the space, ideally when they're enjoying a cacao truffle or a cacao, that they are feeling some sort of resonance within their heart space, and that then is amplified and through these webs of connection. And it's so sweet to hear the love stories about people that met at Maya Moon and now are in a relationship full of love, or there's these beautiful business connections that have happened through our community events, or artists that had that as a launching pad for new work or new gallery showings. I mean, just when you think about the ripple effects that are happening in this kind of centralized community hub, it's so profound. And when I think about, of course, like, maybe it won't work, or maybe it'll change, or maybe things will shift, or whatever, but that feels worth doing enough for me to be willing to keep doing the work for myself, to be able to keep showing up for the business. And I think that also speaks to those core values, right? It's like, if I can imagine at this point where I would want to be investing my time and energy, and it's not that it's so specific that it's Maya Moon necessarily, although that is very compelling at the moment to want to keep moving that forward. But more importantly, it's about, for me, like, how can I optimize the opportunities, the privileges, the innate skills that I have in a way that creates the largest impact for as many people as possible? And that's where I get my drive. And then, yeah, I think the balance points, like you mentioned, balancing work and play. Sometimes I feel like it comes out of necessity. Like I get so into whatever I've been doing work-wise that, and that is something that I'm continuing to learn and flow with. Like I'm naturally intense in many ways and deeply passionate. And so when I am compelled by something, it often becomes tunnel vision. I'm like, oh, I want to, every ounce of me wants to be focused in that space, and it's obsessive. It's an obsession. And I think that's a blessing in some ways, because you can get a lot done in a short amount of time with that level of focus. And I've been learning more and more for myself about the importance then coming out of those cycles to take time for myself and to be out in nature. And I'm fortunate to live on a beautiful property right now that is 2 acres and has breathing room. So this feels very grounding. And then taking that time to surf or be in nature, even just a sip of cacao in the morning. And yeah, it's a constant kind of flexion of remembering where my priorities are. And I've been really coming back to myself these past 3 months and remembering the importance of also putting my needs first, because I get so excited about what I can offer to the point of overexertion. And then, as you mentioned, that imbalance shows up as me being tired and even resentful at times of where my energy is getting pulled on when I don't have much to give. And it's always an inside job, no matter what. So if that's what being reflected to me, I really see that as an invitation to come back to myself and to give myself the things that I need so I can continue to show up in service. So that's part of the inspiration too, is like, oh my gosh, if I'm committed to this mission and I'm not nourishing myself in the ways necessary to be able to embody those values, then I need to check myself, and do that for myself so that others can also continue to benefit. It's reciprocal in that way.
Yeah, seeing how, as I care for myself, it's an optimization tool, to put it kind of bluntly, right? Because then your
For
work
sure.
operating better, can help you with the vision and the mission better. Let's shift really briefly to theta healing. What is it? What brought you to do it? I know you, at least in our sessions, you really seem to enjoy, and I throw everything I have at you. um, how can theta help people right now? Tell me a little bit about all of it.
Theta healing is so cool, and I'm so happy to have found this particular modality of tuning into really the wisdom of higher awareness, or like the truth that resides in source. And yeah, so how I found theta myself, as I mentioned, I was really curious about spirituality throughout my early 20s, and that journey continues. And for a period of time, I was really intrigued by shamanic work and understanding like power animal journeys and this approach of using drum beats and guided visualization to kind of tap into an altered field of awareness and being able to do work in the subconscious from these perspectives. And so I'm still in study and practice with shamanic work, although I will say that I've really enjoyed having theta. A lot of the shamanic work is kind of about going down into lower realms, and it can feel sometimes like heavy lifting. The outcome is absolutely beautiful and very transformative, but it can feel heavy at times. And I also, at that point in time, in kind of studying spiritual development and also working for Health and Human Services for quite some time, learned a lot about like trauma and being trauma informed and the way that trauma informs our understanding of reality. And so I was thinking about this notion that when we have a traumatic experience, often in like a moment in time or a very short experience, it creates a complete shift in our operating system, in our nervous system, and often for the worse, right? It's like we have something, and then all of a sudden, our core beliefs around the world or what's possible um, changes. And this can create a lot of limitations for us. And this is all survival and natural, right? It's our body's way, and our even our higher awareness's way to like kind of like get ourselves out of the way so we can take that blow and not be completely lost. And then oftentimes through the subconscious, these traumas show up with core programs and beliefs that really hold us back. And so I was really curious. It's been at least 5 years, maybe seven now, about this concept of like, okay, well, if we can have a traumatic event that in a moment in time creates a shift in our understanding of ourselves or the world that often creates limitations, it must also be true, the way that energy flows, that we can also create shifts or experience shifts in real time that help to bring us back pretty like exactly and dramatically to like more of our sense of self and our truth and positive, nurturing, loving, supportive beliefs that really set us up for alignment and connection and the things that we all desire in our human experience, I believe. So, right around that time of inquiry was when I was introduced to theta healing, which is essentially a practice and modality of creating a frequency within my body and therefore the body of the shared field that we're operating in as practitioner and recipient, of a theta wave. And the theta frequency, which is a specific pacing by which energy travels, is the same frequency that the subconscious works in, as well as like if you're doing any sort of hypnotherapy work. So it's considered deep work, and it's through the activation of this frequency that we can ask for guidance and support from higher awareness to lift and shift limiting beliefs and to bring in new loving supportive programs that can really help to not just change conscious awareness, which is only about 10% of actually what informs our living, breathing, waking reality, but more importantly to actually shift the frequency and core beliefs operating in the subconscious, which actually affect 80 to 90% of what we experience. So it's a lovely practice. It's super fun, like you mentioned, because, I get the benefit as a practitioner of also getting to hang out in this beautiful field of pure love and light and higher awareness. So it's really awesome to get to meet the people that I work with Theta in that realm and get to see their whole true expression and embodied resonance outside of the programs, because there's so much of that. Like, how often do we just move through our days and we bump into people and we're like just bumping into each other's programming, which is an expression of our energy, but it's not the core truth of who we are. So theta is really about continuing to peel off any programs or layers that have been inherited or informed through experience, and to come back into core essence and expression. And it's a great practice. And it's been cool too, because I do feel that being able to play in those realms in client-based work or even in my own meditation practice, that's part of that self-care. It's the activation of the field of remembrance of what is operating much larger than, these day-to-day moments where we're kind of just like stumbling around, not, I mean, hopefully with more conscientiousness, but realistically like clumsy in our little human bodies, right? Which are such a small component of the broader field of what's really happening. So anyways, not to get too out into the other realms with it, but it's a great practice. It's a wonderful tool to just come back into alignment and to have access to more awareness and more congruence internally that can then shift what's being materialized through that.
I love the expression. Thank you. Because I kind of jumped in when I saw you initially post about this. I was like, I don't know what this is. It's one of those, I don't know what it is, but I know it's that. And I knew I trusted you, and to hold the energy and to be, a really solid practitioner. What I love about Theta is how potently gently potent it is, in that we go through some deep shit. We work through hard stuff, and it feels like it calms my nervous system and roots me back into the truth of who I am, while also elevating my frequency. So it actually shifts me. It's almost like it kind of does a adjustment, internal energetic adjustment. And then I can feel like I'm back rooted in myself. And now I have the space and the capacity to go and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not stuck. There's no pain. I'm not stuck in this, oh my God. I remember our last session that was all about divine masculine, divine feminine, and all the tools, and there's an immediate resonance and immediate sense of knowing and trust, and like an affirmation of the path, even though I never know where we're going to go, right? We never know what's going to come through each session. And so it really has been a activator in the best sense of my nervous system. So I'm working with my nervous system, I'm working through things, and more often than not always in just one session, sometimes it can take a few. There's a permanent shift that takes hold. So I'm not, remember I told you, like, it's almost like we poured concrete over a well, right? Like, I'm not falling into the well over and over again. I'm like, oh, that's good. We patched that up. Like, and it's not some superficial stuff. It's not, affirmations. It's a solid, a deep rooted shift that's gentle, that's permanent, and allows for higher understanding and awareness that allows me to move forward. And it's been really such a blessing, because, as someone who has experienced different kinds of trauma, and, the triggers that come with business, and especially a spiritual business as mine, and I think many of our listeners, triggers a lot, who am I to do this? Visibility stuff, and I don't understand this stuff, and money stuff. And so being able to navigate like these choppy waters, like we're kind of going through waves as opposed to being whacked, in the rocks all the time, makes a huge difference in our ability to not create more harm to ourselves, and in fact actually soothe, appease, and root back into the truth of who we are. So I am so grateful for you. And I'm a huge supporter of my truffles. As soon as the snow passes, I'm excited to eat some more chocolate. I've been making, Maya Moon hot chocolate at home. So let's go to the fire round, because I know we don't have the hot fire question round, because then we don't have a lot of time. So these are 5 questions. Answer with whatever comes to mind, and there can be, intense questions, but just go with. Okay. Question number 1. What is your definition of leadership?
Leadership is being able to stand in the void and to steer the ship, your own or that you're steering for others into territory that's never been accessed before.
Beautiful. Question number 2. What is your leadership edge right now? What's stretching you?
Mm. My leadership edge right now is learning how to call in more support and to continue to align resources like investors or business partners to really hold the frequency of vision and mutual benefit in a way that feels new. It's always been me with a team of people working alongside me, and to bring in that high level support of mutual benefit is a big growth opportunity right now.
Very exciting. Question number 3. What is your soul fluent leadership archetype? A spoiler. And how, if at all, has it informed your work and how it's allowed you to be lead?
Yeah, we talked a lot about this. So it's the divine feminine. I think I was really enjoying the piece about pleasure too. And I think it's so fitting that I have a cacao company, which is absolutely a beverage and food that is about sensory activation or and pleasure. So it is no accident that this frequency wanted to come through in a very feminine, connective, heart-opening way that feels perfectly exact for the frequency of the plant cacao, and therefore me as the messenger and learning for myself. I think we also are drawn to the medicine and the things that we most need in our own lives. That's why we want to speak to them also. So learning how to be playful and pleasurable and enjoy like the rich decadence of life while also making a very potent, just like dark chocolate, impact. That's all that's on the table, and possible with this work. And it always comes back to community. And that's what we do at Maya Moon at the cafe is we have community events and art gatherings and live music. And it's this living, breathing gathering space where people can really enjoy the sensory pleasure of life that comes through interconnectedness. And that's
Yes.
that's what
Here's the
drives
book, and
everything.
you're in the book. Maya Moon is in the book as an example of a divine feminine for anyone who's familiar with it. But I want to read, I didn't do this before, but I just want to read for people in case they're wondering, well, what is the divine feminine? So the brand message of the divine feminine business is together we rise. We are all stronger as a result. And so the dominant motivation for a divine feminine business to lead is global community working together for the betterment of all through love, joy, and collaboration. The key gifts are collaboration, mastery, and community building. So yes, and for those, if you choose to share about this work, the Soul Fluent Leadership Business Guide is where you can find all the 5 archetypes. There's the mystic, the visionary, explorer, strategist, and the divine feminine Soul Fluent Leadership archetype. So let's go back to what's been your greatest leadership or life lesson that you carry with you?
It's to ask for help and to allow space for receiving and to remember that I am worthy of receiving, that as much as I give, I also get to welcome that back into my reality in my personal life as well as in my business.
Final question. What is your favorite leadership quality?
Hmm, that's a good one. There's so many. I think honesty, which is I would define as authenticity of expression. So when people are really authentic in their way of being, their way of moving, and their way of speaking about that, I really value that in people. I think that it's more challenging than we give credit for, especially in all the ways that we're moving through the world now collectively. And I think that's very inspiring to me.
Thank you. So thank you so much. We have just a couple minutes left. So how can people learn more about Maya Moon?
Easy enough. Go to mayamoon.co or mayamooncollective.com if you're in San Diego. And yeah, we'd love to have you come out to Ecuador and join me on a beautiful cacao immersion retreat or order our organic cacao truffles and drinking cacao blends with all sorts of functional benefits. They're 100% whole food. Every part of them has nourishing components for the body, so it really is the most rich, creamy act of self-love, or one of the most that you can enjoy in your daily ritual or among friends. And or we're on Instagram, social media, Maya Moon Co, Maya Moon Collective. So easy
Exactly.
enough.
Yes, and for those that are new to me, I'm Priscilla Steffen. If you're curious what your soul fluent leadership archetype is, and the soul fluent leadership the soul fluent leadership archetype helps you to understand your soul given leadership talents and gifts, what you were born with, and how to apply that in your own business, in your own soul driven business. Go to priscillasteffen.com or priscillasteffen.com/quiz. You will identify which of your 5 archetypes you are, and then how to start applying into your business for optimal impact, profit, joy, and real authentic, true, full expression of self. Thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing yourself so beautifully and authentically today, for keep doing the good work in, still, even though it's not easy. And thank you for being my friend, my healer, my collaborator, my full sister friend, and for us to be on this journey together. You continue to inspire me endlessly, and it's always a pleasure.
Thank you. The feeling is mutual. It's been an honor. Talk to you soon.
Bye.